Have you ever walked into an interview feeling prepared only to be hit with a question that you weren't expecting?
I thought you were going to hit me with a joke there, Carol. Have you ever walked into a bar?
An Irishman and an Englishman.
I think so. Maybe it's a question about a mistake you've made. It's a difficult situation or your biggest weakness. Tell us about your biggest weakness. And suddenly you freak out, your mind goes blank.
Or you'll find yourself halfway through an answer and wondering, how did I actually get here and where on earth am I going with this?
Yeah, right. Today, we're talking about the meaty middle of your interview, the part where the questions start coming, they're flying at you, and candidates either shine or they accidentally start talking themselves into a hole.
Yeah. We'll cover the different types of interview questions for you and give you some frameworks to help you stay on track and what to do when the perfect example just isn't coming for you.
Welcome to Seen, Heard and Hired. Real conversations about work, confidence and careers. So join us. We're two experienced recruiters, career coaches and good friends as we unpack what it really takes to be seen, heard and hired at work. We've got some honest stories, practical insights and the advice that no one ever gives you. Hello, I'm Sarah.
Hi, I'm Carol and we're your hosts. Between us, we've spent more than 40 years working in recruitment and career coaching. So we're really excited to dig into career conversations about the realities of work, hiring and career growth with some banter along the way, we hope. So let's get started. Welcome back to Seen, Heard and Hired. It's great to see you, Sarah.
Great to see you too. And thank you for tuning in, everyone. Great to have you with us.
If you've been following along, we're kind of running an interview series. It's just the way it's worked out, really. And so we've covered how to answer the tell me about yourself, the start of the interview. And we've also gone to the other end of the interview, how to finish strongly. So today we're tackling everything in between.
Yeah, the interview questions.
Yeah, because this is often the part that really creates the most anxiety for job seekers, isn't it? You've done the prep, you've researched the company, you've practiced your introduction, and then those nerves really kick in because you're wondering what questions they're going to ask you.
But the good news is you don't need to have perfect answers. You just need relevant examples and a really clear way of communicating them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to get into what interviewers are actually looking for. And, you know, many candidates, I feel, and I don't know if you agree, Carol, feel like they're sometimes being tested in an interview, judged, and feeling that with some questions, they feel like interviewers are trying to trip them up or catch them out. But really, most interviewers are trying to understand how you think, how you solve problems, how you react in certain situations, how you communicate under pressure even, and how you can work with others and whether your experience aligns with the role.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why when they go into an interview, the nerves really kick in because it's like they feel like they're on the mat almost, isn't it? We're trying to trip them up. But I always remind people that it isn't about having all the answers. It's about helping someone understand who you are, how you work, and what you could bring to their team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we should also normalize questions about mistakes, setbacks, and difficult situations. I know that I've got some hiring managers, especially for senior roles, where they do get into some of those questions that can feel a bit daunting if you haven't prepared for them. So being able to talk about where challenging situations that you've worked in or where things haven't gone right. And it's, again, not about trying to trip you up. It's just about what you actually did and how you handled that, how you did it, because interviewers, they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for that self-awareness, that resilience, that growth, and that you learn something from it.
Absolutely. And everyone makes mistakes. We learn. There's failure. There's things that happen. And sometimes that's where the biggest growth is, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, what you're learning. I mean, if we even relate to the podcast, what we've been learning in the last few weeks, trying to get going. Let's just get this going. And then it's like so many things. Anyway, but we digress. Yeah, but totally, we can totally relate. So we felt today it was really good to kind of walk you through some of the understanding those different type of interviews and questions. So before we jump into them, it's probably just worth remembering that not every interview is the same though.
Yeah.
Some interviews can be incredibly structured. Others can feel more like a conversation over a coffee, but a lot comes down to the interviewer, the organization and the role, really.
Yeah. Definitely. And some organizations, they will have that formal interview guide and structure that they have to follow or that they want to follow. And they've got the behavioral questions that they ask every candidate. Others will have a list of topics that they want to cover, but the conversation may flow more naturally. And sometimes you genuinely are just having a coffee with the hiring manager who wants to get to know you as a person.
It's great when they flow well, isn't it? Like a conversation, even though it might be structured, having a conversation. And that's a sign of a good interviewer, actually. And that is the challenge when you get in and someone doesn't really know how to run an interview. But I also say to people, the mistake that people can make is assuming that just because someone says, let's have a chat or just meet the team for a coffee, that they don't need to prepare. You absolutely should prepare, because that is, whether it's a coffee meeting or an informal conversation or a structured interview, people are still assessing whether you're the right fit for them. Would you agree, Sarah?
Definitely. It's funny, actually. I've got somebody interviewing today as we speak who is going in for a second stage coffee and thinking, it was just a conversation, which it absolutely is. It is over a cup of coffee. However, the person he's meeting is an executive director, very senior, and will be kind of asking some tough questions about why he wants the job and, why he's interested. So always prepare. And the more that you can prepare for something, and then you can kind of handle anything that's thrown at you, And one of the best questions you can ask the recruiter beforehand is, what will the format be? You need to find out what it will be. So you can ask questions like, who will I be meeting? So you can stalk them on LinkedIn. How long will it be? Because we've all been there where you prepared for a 45-minute interview. I've been there before, and I've been in there 20 minutes and thought, oh, that was terrible. And I did actually get the job, by the way. But you never know. Like, you need to, because it just can leave you feeling not great. So you need to know how long it will be. Will it be behavioral based, which we're getting into today? And is there anything specific that I should be preparing for? The more information you have, the better that you can prepare.
The part too about how long will it be? Because, you might have taken an hour and a half off work and rushed across town or whatever it might be. And then it's like a 2-hour, we're going to show you around the office or the factory or whatever it is that you're interviewing at. You're kind of like, oh, I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
And if you don't get the offer of the tour, you might think, oh, I've done really badly. So, it's good to know. Yeah, for sure. So information, the more information you have, the better you can prepare. It's also the time, and I say this to so many people in my career coaching, I work with people and say, like, have you got the job description or the position description?
Yeah.
So they might be ready to go for an interview and we're helping them prep.
Yeah.
And there's no position description available. That's one of my bugbears. As a recruiter, I always share the position description with someone if they're going to interview, because why would you want to withhold that from someone? That's I feel like that's setting someone up to fail. So you've got to be able to have it so you can actually see, well, is this actually the job? But also be able to prepare some examples, go through the competencies, whether it's communication. Some of them are pretty standard, but being able to prepare some examples from some of those competencies.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Absolutely. And I tell people to download the ad as well. So they've got both. So when I'm sending people interviews, I send them the position description, but hopefully they've already downloaded the ad. If you've been working with me, you definitely have, because that's fresh. The position description may have been wrote by a HR professional 10 years ago, and it may not really be relevant, not as relevant. So make sure that you're using both tools so they are fully up to date. Definitely.
That's a very good point. We think about the times that we've been chasing a hiring manager for a good position description or helping them to get it sorted, because, sometimes it's the last thing on their list. And, that's a whole other episode. Should be the first thing on the list. Yeah. So you may have heard of behavioural-based interviews, or you may have been in a behavioural-based interview, but it's an area where you get the opportunity to really talk in more detail about what you've done. So that's what we're focusing on today. Storytelling, and I go on about storytelling all the time, but it is really the key. People are thinking to themselves when they're in an interview, I must answer the question and really focus on that. But the best way is just tell a story to demonstrate that skill. And we all know when we sort of have that recall about stories, it'll help you feel more relaxed. So the other part to a behavioural-based question is to really listen to the way they structure the question. Hopefully an interviewer will tell you that they're going to go into some behavioural-based interviewing, but when they say, tell me about a time or describe a situation, the key is to talk about a specific situation. Don't generalize. It is not helpful. So it could be, tell me about a time you handled conflict. Tell me about a difficult stakeholder. Describe a situation when something went wrong. I mean, we'll highlight those a bit more for you, but the stories can really provide the context.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree? Like, anyone can say, I'm a great problem solver, but that doesn't prove anything. A story about it really shows that challenge, your thinking, your actions, and then the outcome.
Yeah. And that's why going back to that position description and listing those key competencies that they're looking for. And I always tell people to go in armed with 8 to 10 examples from the competencies of when they've acted in that situation. So whether it be problem solving, attention to detail, communication. So you're drawing from different stories at different moments throughout your career, and you can use them throughout the interview. And there's situational questions as well, because they are different. That's more, what would you do if, or how would you handle? So more future focus. So behavioural questions explore what you've done, and then situational questions explore how you think.
Yeah, that's all very good points. The situational versus behavioural, trying to break those down. So I guess the rationale for using behavioural-based questions is that the past behaviour can indicate your future behaviour in a situation. So that's where a framework like the STAR model can really help. If you've not heard of it before, it's just a framework that helps you really gather your thoughts and be able to speak really succinctly. It stands for situation, task, action, and result. That is a format that you would use if you are going into behavioural-based interviewing. Yeah. Do you like the STAR format, Sarah?
I don't. I actually
interesting, controversial again.
Traditional. Look, I think there's a time and a place for the STAR format. Absolutely. If you're a fresh graduate or you're really, really nervous and you're very inexperienced, it helps you stay focused. But I think why I don't love it is because people can get very fixated on sticking to that STAR format, you know, the situation, task, action, result. And it can often hinder your storytelling ability because you are focused on making sure that, or you spend too much time on setting up the scene and maybe skipping through what you've actually done and what it resulted in. Yeah, there is another format as well, the SAR, which, if I am talking to candidates about, focusing more on that. So maybe less of the task and more just setting up the scene, what action you took, and then what happened from that, what learnings did you take away from it. Yeah,
look, all good points. And controversial about the STAR. Everyone talks about the STAR. But I know what you mean, because if people are too focused on, I must talk about the situation and then the task and then the action, they get themselves all flustered and spend way too much time in one part. What we're really keen on, and I think that's where that's, if we drop the T, the situation, then you're only giving a short overview of what it was. But what we want to know is the action and then the outcome. And I think a lot of people forget to give us the result, because I'll be sitting there listening to someone tell me an example, and then we get to the end and go, well, what happened? Did it work? Did it not work? I think that's where, if you drop the T and go to the SAR in your head, spend more time talking about the action and the result. So the key really is just to help you keep structured. It's not a hold all or a must do. It's just a way to sort of help you reflect.
Yeah. And we'll pop a simple STAR guide in the show notes for you to have a look at. But the important points really is, when you're storytelling as well, is to try and avoid, we did this, we worked on that, our team did this. You know, absolutely, sometimes that is great, but you need to also be talking about what the team did and what you did as part of that team. So make sure you're talking about both aspects. What was your role in what the team did? What actions did you personally take in the whole project, and what contribution did you make, and what learnings did you take from it as well? So being able to talk about yourself, people definitely shy away from that in interviews because they feel like they're being big-headed, don't want to come across as arrogant. But this is an interview, you know, if you frame it in the right way, that confidence and that energy is beautiful.
That's so true about the not blowing your own trumpet sort of thing, or the tall poppy thing. You've been invited to an interview. This is your chance to talk about how great how great you are and
Yes,
what you've
yeah,
done. So, and
love
as
it.
Sarah said, there's nothing wrong with saying we did this or part of a team or I was part of a project, but then we really want you to hone into the aspects of it that you contributed or take the credit for in terms of that wider team. Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah,
nothing wrong
don't
with
shy
doing
away from
that.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. And often, an interviewer, if they're having to say to you, and then what happened, or what about the part you did? Some interviewers will encourage you and sort of get you talking.
Mm.
But there are others who they're just really following a format and they're like, just moving on. So they're not
Yeah.
going to get to the bottom of that example if you can't find a way to articulate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think too the perfect example scenario, I think that's one of the biggest myths in interviewing, that you need the perfect example for every question. They
Yes.
often think, I've never faced that situation before, but you don't need an exact match as such. You just need a really relevant example. It could be perhaps you feel you haven't managed a difficult stakeholder in
Yeah.
exactly the way that the interviewer is describing or asking. Or maybe you've not led a project of that size, but there'll be something that you've done that's transferable. So the interviewer is often looking for those transferable skills and how you approach the situation, not whether you've necessarily experienced the exact scenario that they're asking. Yeah, is that something you've seen, Sarah?
Yeah, I agree. We try and dig into our brains. We've done all this prep and we're trying to remember the perfect example. And we often will walk out the interview and we're like, that was the one we wanted to talk about. The key is, though, is just to not panic. There will be examples that you can use from some study or volunteering or sport, community groups and life experiences. And particularly for graduates or those earlier in their careers, to have some relevant examples to draw on that really demonstrate that scenario. You don't need the perfect example. Often the best examples, they are the most authentic, and that's absolutely fine if you want to bring something else in from your personal life, if you want to go there, and maybe it's a hobby that you have or something that you love doing, and just acknowledging that it's not a work situation, but that you want to highlight. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, especially if it's in a volunteering capacity where you've had to lead people,
Yeah.
which may not be something you've had the opportunity to do in your work to date. We thought too it'd be really good to talk about some of these questions that everyone dreads. There's some that come sort of cliche questions. I mean, sometimes I might say to someone, I know it's a cliche, but I really want to know what your strengths are. One of the ones that everyone probably dreads is, what is your biggest weakness?
Yes, that's a terrible question, isn't it? But I mean, people still asking it. What's your top 3 weaknesses, or what's your biggest weakness? I hate that. I think a better version for hiring managers would be, what are you continuing to develop? What would you like to improve? What are you working on for your own growth, self-awareness, development? But if you are at an interview and you do get asked that question, what's your biggest weakness? Just reframe it, reframe it to be something that you're focusing on right now, that you are continuing to develop. Yeah,
good points. And
the
what's the
worst
biggest weakness? I don't have any weaknesses. What do you mean?
Oh, yes, we all get that as well.
And that's why you do have to go in prepared. So when someone's asking, the way the interviewer might reframe that is, what are you continuing to develop in? What do you wish you were better at? Or what would you like to improve in? Those are asking you what your weaknesses are. It's being able to demonstrate that self-awareness. So do go in with something, but do avoid things like saying, I'm a perfectionist, because then I'm too hardworking. Instead, it's choose something or a genuine development area that you're working on, potentially working on with your manager, or something you'd really like to study that really intrigues you, and show that curiosity. And then if it's something that you've had to work on, you can talk about what you've learned from it or what you've done to improve, because we've all got things to work on and how we grow. And that's a really exciting part, because you'll find the interviewer starting to lean in and really wanting to hear more about that, because it's showing that you've got curiosity to think.
Yeah, I agree. Please don't say you're a perfectionist. I mean, you may well be. And that's okay, but don't say it in the interview. It could be learning, getting better at using AI to help you in your job. That's such a growing area at the moment, and that could be something that you're delving into a bit more, and you're really excited by that technology piece. But don't fall into that.
Just on the AI piece, I saw something today about how managers are going to actually help train people at work to use it, because you can't take it as read that what you're getting out of it is actually true. Or you can challenge it and find that it's like, oh yeah, my bad, we should have done that, or should have said it that way. Still being able to maintain that level of independence, really. We could talk about that all day. So Sarah, tell me, what are some behavioural-based questions for people to listen out for, and how they should cover them off? Some of these real ones that people find challenging. What's another one?
Tell me about a mistake you've made. I think the first thing naturally that people do would be to panic, but please don't panic. Everyone's made mistakes. Again, nobody's perfect. Interviewers are assessing that self-awareness piece, that accountability, that what did you learn from it, and then what did you do differently next time, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sharing, as you say, the situation, what happened in that situation and what you learned. We've talked about that a little bit earlier, but it's one of those typical questions that if you're asked straight away, what mistake have you made, is what you'd do differently now. I think another one that can come up that's a struggle for people too is, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult person or stakeholder. I mean, that's going to come up in many interviews, and particularly if you're leading people or you're in a more senior role, but equally it's across the board, because it's kind of testing your communication, how you navigate people, because we're not going to get on with everybody, and there'll be people in the office or in that environment or supplier or whomever that you're going to find quite challenging. So it's testing that. It's testing your emotional intelligence to have an awareness that it's a bit hard and how I'm going to cope. Possibly how you manage conflict too.
And don't name drop. I think people do fall into this trap still.
Yeah.
Oh, my CEO did this and then he did that, and it was just I had to try and sort it out for him. Everybody's had difficult people to deal with at work, but talking about it in a way that you're not you're kind of keeping that anonymity.
Yeah, you're not bagging them. Yeah,
you're not bagging them out. Yeah, exactly. Even if they were like, the interviewer isn't assessing your manager, they're assessing you and how you dealt with it, because it can come across as a real red flag if you're bagging out somebody in an interview. Yeah,
for sure. And it's a red flag for a hiring manager, because if you're doing it in an interview, you're quite likely to be in that mode when something goes wrong, blaming everyone else, and as Sarah said, it's not about the manager, it's about you and how you handle that. Even reflecting back to that STAR model or the SAR model is actually only spend a short amount of time in that situation. And the situation might be, yes, the manager's really hard work and I don't know how to handle him, but it's being able to highlight that, but navigate through how you actually manage that.
Talk to me about how you deal with a question around, on the same vein as that, tell me about a time something didn't go to plan. How should you handle that question?
Yeah, and that can really throw people too. It's interesting because we all want the interview to be really positive, but as we all know in our workday, things don't go to plan, and how people get really flustered or how you cope with that and how you navigate and communicate. It's testing your resilience, it's your ability to problem solve, it's how adaptable you are. It's also that understanding that, as we've said before, failure isn't the problem, not learning from it is. So you might go, yeah, this happened. But so again, using the STAR model, focus on how you approach the situation, how you communicated what was going on, and just that level of professionalism that you used within it. So you weren't running around the office yelling and screaming at everybody. It was more, this didn't go to plan and this is how I navigated it. And what the resolution was. You might have run around the office yelling and screaming the sky was falling in, but hopefully you're able to demonstrate how you actually navigated that. I've got another one for you, Sarah. This is one, and I do like this question. I use this a lot. So anyone who might be listening that I've interviewed in the past will know that this is one that comes up a lot. Tell me about a time you influenced someone or gained buy-in to something that you needed to introduce to the business.
Oh, I'm being interviewed, put on the spot.
It's quite a good one because, I'll put you on the spot, you have to tell me now. But it's quite a good one because it might not even be a leadership position. So it's how you're influencing, because we're all influencing, whether we know it or not. We're trying to understand it could be a role where there's some change that's needed and good change, positive change, and how you're going to sell that to the business or introduce something and getting buy-in. Yes. Would you agree?
I would.
Again, thinking of your interview examples as stories from your career rather than answers to memorize, because that one we just discussed, the tell me about the influencing, there'll be heaps of times that you've done that. And if you sit and just have a reflect on that before you go to the interview, it's a story. Again, it's not something that you need to memorize. So that's a tip, but also another preparation tip. And I think Sarah mentioned before, to tell people to have sort of 8 to 10, and you highlighted that earlier. So don't prepare 50 questions. You're going to get yourself completely overwrought. Just prepare, if it's 5 to 10 strong stories, but they can relate to a role, and it can often cross over if there's a question that comes up that throws you. You might not be able to use it for a particular example, but you might be able to change it slightly if they're asking it in a slightly different way.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's okay to pause, isn't it? If you find yourself panicking or you're really nervous or you just can't think, take a minute, take a breath, get some water. Maybe you've got your notebook in front of you. You can jot something down. You can ask for clarification. It's okay to say, can you just repeat that question for me, please? And just take in that little bit of time to pause and just reflect on your answer rather than kind of going straight in and starting to waffle and then getting lost halfway through.
Oh, and or even reflecting back to them. Yeah. Is that what you were looking for? Is that what you needed? Pausing, having a drink. 5 seconds is nothing. You know, it feels like nothing. So if someone ever comes into the interview and says, would you like a glass of water? Take the glass of water.
Yeah.
Then that gives you just something to sort of defer to if you need a moment. Yeah. I think the other part too, Sarah, is we would know this in an interview. It's keeping your answers succinct, not starting the story 5 years or 10 years before the actual example. And we've all got places to be, really, at the end of the day, don't we? So we've heard answers that start with, you know, back in 2017 and suddenly we're getting a full history.
Yeah, I switch off. I actually do.
Yeah. Or when people say, let me give you some context, and we know we're in for a long haul.
You need to frame the question up better, but really you don't need to go into your life history. Keep it succinct. Aim for around 1 to 3 minutes and lots of detail, but not so much detail that you forget what the question was or forget what action you actually take and what learnings you took from it. That's the real important parts in the story. Yeah,
that's where the framework that we're talking to you about today can help stop you going off on tangents or trying to squeeze every experience that you've ever had into a response, into one response. Yeah. And remember that some interviewers, it could be their first interview and they could be nervous. So you might not get in your own flow, because I know I've talked to people before, they go, I just couldn't get in my flow. And it's because they have this expectation of what the interview is going to be like. Yeah. So you can't assume it's going to go how you had it planned in your head. There might be an example you've got prepared and you need to say it even when you haven't been asked, but don't do that, because they might ask you a particular question. Next minute you're giving an example that you've rehearsed, and that's just never going to work.
So good.
Should we talk about some of the more irrelevant, awful questions that we've heard about?
Oh, completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
That be. One of the worst questions I've heard people ask is, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? Or do you prefer Apple or Android? What have you heard?
I just don't understand why people even do that. I think they think they're being clever, or whether it's relaxing someone, but it's not. It's actually quite off-putting and upsetting for people, because they've come into an interview and want to be able to give you some examples, and then you're off talking about other things. There's one that really, it went quite viral online actually. It's, if you were a kitchen utensil, what would you be and why? Like, honestly.
A kitchen utensil. Seriously, why?
Yeah, and it went viral because there was so much response. I mean, some people were quite humorous around it. So they were saying, on a lighter note, they jumped in with responses like, I'd be a chef's knife because I'm sharp and versatile. Or I'd be a potato masher because they're proudly admitting that they don't fit in the drawer. But seriously, it's not cool. There are a lot of people online who are very upset about it, because it's stressful enough for a candidate. Why not ask something meaningful, like, what's a piece of work you're most proud of? Let them tell you a good story instead of making them feel probably belittled, frankly.
Is trying to trip people up. I mean, really, kitchen utensil, you have not prepared for that question. I'm sorry. So that if you get asked that question, think about if you actually want to work for this person. Would be my advice.
I'm sitting here thinking, what would I be? I don't even know.
I have no idea.
That's something I've never thought about.
That's just horrendous. So, should we go into our myths and truths segment to see if you've been paying attention and see if you've been listening? So, Carol, if I need to pause and think, I will look unprepared. Is that a myth or a truth?
Absolute myth. Yeah. I think you're much better off pausing, having that drink of water. Yeah, so that you can gather your thoughts. Here's another one for you, Sarah. I need a perfect example for every question.
Yeah, that is a myth. It does not need to be perfect. It needs to be relevant, telling a story, and just explaining what happened. And you can use examples from outside of work. Got one for you, Carol. Interviewers expect me to have never made mistakes.
So true. No, absolute myth. We're all perfect, aren't we? Yeah, sorry. Not at all. And I think if you are aware of this mistake you made and can really articulate that in a really great way, it's gold.
Yeah.
Another one for you, Sarah. Most interviewers can tell when you're answering the question you wanted to be asked rather than the one they asked.
It is a truth. I think we know that we're getting to the end of an interview and we've got an example that we really want to get in and we just blurt it out because it's a great example. But if it's not reflecting of the question being asked, it can just look silly, like you haven't really listened, you're not paying attention. So maybe leave that still for the end because they can tell if you're just using a random example just because you think it's a really great one. Yeah.
Such a good point.
So Carol, STAR is a guide, not a script.
So true. And I think there's fors and against it. People don't like it, as we know. Sarah commented on that earlier. I prefer a really good conversation as well, but I will use the behavioural-based questions, but I want to guide people. So it's not a script.
We'll post some key takeaways from this as part of the show notes, so you can read that in the show notes of this episode. But just to close, interviews are not about perfection.
So true. They're about connection, communication, and really helping someone understand what you could bring to them, to the role, to the company.
Yeah. And if you lose your train of thought or you need a moment to think, laugh it off. Even it's okay to laugh at yourself in an interview. We are all human. And even just say, oh, I've lost my trail of thought there. Or I think I'm rambling a little bit. Sorry about that. And just that self-awareness, self-reflection. It is absolutely okay.
Because the people interviewing you are human too. They might be sitting there tripping over some of their words like I just did. But
as we said earlier, we'll pop the STAR or the SAR, or both, guides in the show notes on our page. So you can have a look at them in this episode as well.
And if you know someone preparing for an interview, we'd love you to share this episode with them.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode and we can't wait to catch you in the next one.
Yeah, we really love being here with you. Great to see you, Sarah. And remember, life is short. Surround yourself with the right people to be seen, heard, and hired.
Thank you. Catch you soon.
See ya.